Hello, my name is Ron Gunnell, Global Envoy for the Choir Presidency and Executive Producer for Global Talent for the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square. It is such a pleasure to spend this time with you to celebrate joy, Christmas with the Tabernacle Choir on BYUtv and PBS, premiering this holiday season on broadcast and streaming. It is wonderful to be here in London with the lovely Lesley Nicol. We'll be joined shortly by her fellow guest artist, Michael Maliakel, and music director of the choir, Mack Wilberg, who will also be with us remotely. Michael and Lesley were beyond spectacular last December when they performed with our all-volunteer cast of 500, including the choir, orchestra, bell ringers, actors, and more. Per a 20-year tradition, those concerts were taped in front of 3 live audiences in Salt Lake City's 21,000-seat conference center at Temple Square to air on PBS and BYUtv this year. This particular special is a rich and moving celebration of the season that combines timeless music like Joy to the World, Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, and God Help the Outcasts, with the true story of how Victor Hugo and his wife hosted a Christmas feast for impoverished children in their town. Esteemed screen and stage actor Lesley Nicol is perhaps best known as the downstairs cook Mrs. Patmore in 6 seasons of the PBS masterpiece series Downton Abbey, followed by 2 films with another one on the way next year. She's also starred on stage on the West End, along with a number of other television and film credits. Michael Maliakel is an award-winning actor and singer who just ended a 3-year run as the title role in Disney's Aladdin on Broadway. He has recently been featured in 2 other PBS concert specials, Broadway's Brightest Lights, alongside fellow Tabernacle Choir Christmas concert alum Megan Hilty, and An Evening with Lerner Lowe. Mack Wilberg has been music director of the Tabernacle Choir since 2008, and served as associate music director prior to that, starting in 1999. His compositions and arrangements, which are always a highlight of the Christmas concerts, have been performed and recorded by musical ensembles throughout the world. We're going to get started with our Q&As very soon, but before we do that, here's how it's going to work. Please type your question into the chat, making sure your name and outlet are included. If your question is selected, I will call on you. At that point, you'll be unmuted and the floor will be yours. It's almost time for our special guest to join us, but first let's take a brief look at this year's concert special.
This season, don't miss Joy, Christmas with the Tabernacle Choir, featuring Broadway sensation Michael Maliakel and award-winning star of stage and screen Lesley Nicol. It's a stirring celebration with unforgettable music from the Tabernacle Choir and Orchestra at Temple Square, reflecting their distinctive, heartfelt signature sound. Beginning with a grand processional of over 400 singers and instrumentalists, the concert features herald trumpets and the bells at Temple Square. It also includes sparkling favorites like John Williams' Merry Christmas from Home Alone 2. It's an evening overflowing with gems from a treasury of Christmas melodies and messages for music lovers of all ages. The concert also premieres music and storytelling about Victor Hugo, author of Les Miserables, how he brought people together and inspired them to serve one another at Christmas time. It's all part of a rich musical feast of choral masterworks, familiar carols, and new arrangements of classic songs, inviting audiences to remember the universal meaning of Christmas and revive the goodwill that inspires holiday festivities around the world. This season, join us in experiencing the joy of Christmas and rejoice in the splendor of Christmas with the Tabernacle Choir.
So our next first question is from Rick Bentley from Nexstar Media.
Sorry, they just unmuted me. The question is for the talent. When I watch these specials, I can hear the power of the music. Could you, as performers, talk about what it feels like? Is there a physical power that you feel when you're performing in front of such a large group of musicians and singers? I mean, is it almost like a wave of sound hitting you in the back?
Shall I go, Michael? And then you go.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just say I've never been that close to a choir that large and an orchestra. Nobody gets that unless you're Mack right in front of them. You know, for an average person, you just don't get to stand and listen to that volume of sound, and it's mind-blowing. It's utterly and you do physically feel it in you, because think of all that energy invested in that. So it was a wonderful, wonderful experience for me. Different for Michael, obviously, because he was singing.
But I feel exactly the same way. I mean, you physically feel it vibrating through your core, and I think it's a feeling unlike anything I've had before, and one I'll never forget. And then on top of that, to get to sing with them and all breathe collectively, this many people all breathing in sync, it's a really, really beautiful, miraculous thing.
Thank you. Our next is UK freelancer Catherine Hassel.
I know Catherine Hassel.
Oh, good.
She's a sweetheart. Hi, Catherine.
Hey, Lesley, how are you doing?
All right, thank you.
Good. So it's a big honour to be part of the Tabernacle Choir festive performance, following in the footsteps of people like Angela Lansbury, Gladys Knight, Christian Chenoweth. The American people have taken you to their hearts thanks to Downton. How does it feel to know that you and Mrs. Patmore are so beloved by people on the other side of the world, you know, all over the world?
Well, thank you for saying that. It's a lovely one-off. I mean, yeah, it's funny enough. I just did a little job on a Cunard cruise ship. I was their speaker, and there was a gentleman next to me, a German man, whose English was quite faltering, but he said it anyway, and he just said, "Do you know you are loved by people all over the world, and I am one of those people." So, yeah, you don't take that for granted. That was very touching, and yeah, and actually, to tell you what was nice, Catherine, about doing this gig, apart from everything else, is that instead of going on with no makeup, I got hair and makeup for a change.
Mrs. Patmore is dolled up for the
Hold
nation.
up, I know, which is a joy. And I was very lucky to have my lovely hairdresser with me, Ian, and Heidi there. They provided a wonderful makeup lady too. So yeah, it was a great team.
So you were in the posh frocks for a change.
Yes, they got me some posh frocks. They did. I know. It's for me, it's mind-blowing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next guest is Katie Yoder with Our Sunday Visitor.
Hello, thank you. I write for Our Sunday Visitor, a Catholic news site. And so, Michael, I wanted to ask you, I know you've spoken before about being Catholic. Could you tell me a little bit about, as a Catholic, what does Christmas mean to you? And has your faith impacted your musical career?
Yeah, I think I owe a lot to the Catholic Church for why I do what I do today. Honestly, I grew up singing in the church choir, and I don't think at that point my mom ever figured that, you know, putting her son in the church choir would lead down this road. But in many ways, those moments were foundational in why I do this today. Christmas growing up was always about going to the midnight mass and having a nice meal before and then the next day. And then as I got older, I was cantering sometimes 4, 5, 6 services during that week, Christmas, day and Christmas Eve. So it's been a big part of my life. And I think I will never be able to separate the two. For me, those things are just intertwined. And the broadcast here at the moment, the Tabernacle Choir PBS broadcasts were also ingrained in those experiences. And so all of that together to finally get to be a part of it was absolutely mind-blowing. And it felt like a real full circle moment. And I'm so grateful to have it recorded so beautifully and something that I can show to my kids down the line.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next is Scott Fishman from TV Insider.
Thank you. What I know, this is such a big production. You both have history on stage and on screen and being on sets and doing shows like this. What went into preparing, and then Mack, if you can comment too on what goes into preparing for this performance. Like, there's a lot of scheduling, there's a lot of moving parts. So if you kind of just give us a peek behind the curtain on what goes on with this sort of production compared to others that you guys have been a part of.
Let's start with Michael.
The scale is unlike anything I've ever been a part of. I mean, the army of people on stage you all see, but the massive operation behind the scenes to make it all work, the fantastic crew, the sound folks, the wardrobe people, it really, I think they started planning this year's, I understand, like as soon as ours was done. So it's a full year-long process, and they've been doing it for over 20 years now. So it's a really well-oiled machine. From my perspective, it all went so beautifully smoothly. Everything was taken care of. Every need we could have had was taken care of before I could even ask for something. And it's incredible. I mean, certainly, putting together a big Broadway show like Aladdin also requires a huge effort and a lot of people every night. It's just it makes the operation feel like a little high school show in comparison. The orchestra and the number of camera angles that they were able to capture, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. But again, I think they've had some practice over the years, so it really runs very smoothly.
One of the things that impressed me hugely was just before the Saturday night performance, a large chunk of tooth fell out of my head. It was, in fact, a whole tooth fell out. And I said, these guys look after you so beautifully. Turns out, if you've got a choir of 300 plus, they had at least 3 dentists and an oral surgeon in there. So I had my pick of somebody coming immediately to sort it out. That was pretty impressive. But just in terms of the logistics, the actors had been working very hard to get their little scenarios, their scenes together. I came in sort of for a couple of sessions, Monday, Tuesday, and I went on a crash course in teleprompter, because there are 8 massive teleprompters. And that was fun, just learning very quickly, because there isn't long, just how to work that. And again, even though it was quite rushed in the sense that you don't have acres of time, there was a sense of peace and calm around the place because they've done it so often. And they're kind people, and they look after you. And you don't feel under pressure, really. You just get in there. They know what you need to do. You do it. And then it's very exciting because you've got thousands of people to perform in front of. That's the gist of my little story.
Mack? Mack, how about you?
Well, let me just first of all say what a great pleasure it was to have Lesley and Michael as our guest artists last year. And the program last year, I think, was a high for everyone in our 24 years of presenting this program. And it's true that we have done this for many years now, and we know what goes into making it happen. But still, every year, you swallow hard and say, "I hope that this all comes together." And we have over 500 volunteer musicians. That's between the choir, the orchestra, the bells, and then we also have herald trumpets. Every one of those musicians volunteer their time and talent to making all of this happen. And like any endeavor like this, it's done with minimal rehearsal. And so we hold our breath every year, but it's also when we have guest artists such as Michael and Lesley, who are so professional and also such a delight to work with. It makes the job a little bit easier.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Alan Foster from Entertaining Options.
Hey, Mac, this question's for you. I wanted to know, what is the most challenging or rewarding aspect of being a music director of such a massive production? Is there anything that stands out in particular?
Well, it is a great privilege to be able to do what I do, and I try not to take it for granted. But of course, when you get into the nuts and bolts in rehearsal, you're hearing all sorts of things that need to be fixed, and your responsibility is indeed to fix all of those issues that you're hearing. But I think probably the greatest satisfaction is when it all comes together and everybody's doing their part and everybody's remembering everything that has been rehearsed and everything that has been talked about, and to have it all come together in such a great way, I think is probably the reward that comes from all of that hard work. And I'll just say that not only for myself, but I think everybody involved. We perform on a weekly basis. We do a 30-minute broadcast every Sunday morning called Music in the Spoken Word. And so we're used to doing this. But Christmas, the Christmas concert certainly is our performance on steroids, if you will, because there's so many elements that have to come together. And so when all those elements come together, it is indeed a great reward.
Thank you, Mac. Karen Butler from UPI.
Hello. I was wondering, for Lesley and Michael, what advice would you give future performers who sign up for this extraordinary experience?
Well, I'll just echo what Hugh Bonneville said to me. Hugh, being Lord Grantham from Downton Abbey, he did it 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago.
Longer.
Yeah. When he'd heard that I'd been asked to do it, he said, consider me as your mentor. He said, my mentor was another actor called Martin Jarvis, I think.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Martin said to Hugh, you've got to do this. You will never do anything like this again. You won't have done anything like it before. And I would say the same, because that's true. That's absolutely true. So he just said, you just get in there and do it.
Beautiful.
Michael.
Anything to add, Michael?
I would echo that too. I think, there's a lot of preparation on our ends that goes into it in terms of making sure that we understand the arrangements and are familiar with the music inside and out, so that I think by the time you get there, you really want to be present, because I think it does all happen and come together very quickly. And I think my favorite memories were just those moments that I was able to just look around and take it all in and be grateful for the amazing hard work of all the musicians and everyone that came together to pull this off. Because I think if you're worried about all of the little nitpicky musical things in that moment, then you don't really get a chance to take in what an incredible thing is happening in front of you. And so I tried my best to be as present as possible. And I'd advise anyone that gets to do this again to do that too. Luckily, it gets filmed so beautifully, so you have this amazing archive of the experience that you've had with the behind the scenes footage and everything. But just trying to be as present as possible, because it's a huge responsibility, but the experience is so gratifying and beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lottie Johnson from Deseret News.
Hi, and I have my toddler in the background, so if it gets a little noisy, I apologize. I was just wondering, for both of you, Lesley and Michael, prior to your performances, had you ever been in Utah before? Like, what was your familiarity with the state? And were you able to explore Utah at all when you were in town for the performances?
I'll just say, no, I didn't. There was no time to explore. So people say, what did you think of Salt Lake? I said, I don't know. I didn't see it, except I did go to a lovely organ recital. I had been at the director's lab at Sundance. So that's the state of Utah, isn't it? Yeah. That was working on with some new directors a few years ago when I lived in the States. Again, I didn't see anything beyond Sundance, to be honest. So I need to go back. I think there's a trip lying ahead at some point.
Yeah, similarly, I didn't get as much time as I think I would like. It was my first real visit to Salt Lake. My little brother got to perform with the Tabernacle Choir. He was with the American Boy Choir at that time. And so I've always been really jealous of him. So to finally get to do it has felt really nice. But I did have one extra day, and Ron so graciously took me out to dinner. And so that was a lovely little moment to wrap up my visit in Salt Lake. But I've got to get back.
Well, we'll look forward to having you back. So.
Thanks.
Thank you. Alan Foster from Entertaining Options.
Hello, this is for Mack again. I was very interested in the volunteer aspect. Where do these musicians come from? Are they professionals, teachers? Is there an audition process? How does that all work?
Well, that's a very good question. Thanks for asking it. We do have a pretty involved audition process for our singers. We audition singers once a year. They come from all walks of life. And because we perform, the choir and the orchestra both, we perform over 300 pieces a year. And so we have to have musicians who can obviously have very good skills. And so our audition process is quite involved. For our singers, it takes almost 4 months from beginning to end. Our instrumentalists, of course, are a little bit different, and they all of them have had extensive training to play at the level that they are able to do. And so we are blessed with fine musicians, and not only are they fine, but they're also great to work with, and are wonderful people. And so it's a great pleasure and privilege to be able to do what we do. Now, with that said, of course, we have to work hard to do what it just doesn't happen magically. And so everybody, we only rehearse once a week, in addition to our Sunday morning broadcast, which we of course do on a weekly basis.
Thank you.
So having said that, as you can all imagine, Mack has an incredible busy schedule and responsible for our new concerts coming up in a few weeks. Mack, is there anything you'd like to add before we let you go?
No, just to say what a great pleasure it was to do the concert last year with Lesley and Michael. And Lesley and Michael, we would love you to come back anytime. So I'm following up on the question we had just a moment ago about you would be welcome anytime. And we are just pleased with the way that the concert turned out, and we hope that everyone will enjoy the broadcast in whatever way that you see it. I think that you'll be well rewarded for watching.
Thank you, Mack, and thank you for your incredible work. And we'll excuse you now to get back to that, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you to everyone.
Thanks, Mack.
Bye.
Our next question is from Mike Hughes with TV America.
Yeah, this is for Michael. You mentioned on the show that you have, as a boy, watched the show, the concert. Tell us a little bit, how old do you think you were at that time, the first time you saw it? What was it that struck you about it back then? And finally, when you got here now, what was maybe different than you thought it would be?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how old I was, but it was before I joined the American Boy Choir. So I want to say I was probably 8 or so. I just remember my parents were not particularly artsy, I guess, and we didn't, they didn't take us to go see theater or Broadway shows or whatnot. And so I had never seen anything even remotely like this, and it was just mind blowing in terms of the scale. I didn't know that people could create sounds like that. I had truly no exposure to any of it beyond what I heard, I guess, at church or, certainly, pop songs on the radio. But this kind of orchestral singing and the way that the voices and the instruments come together. And it was my first introduction to these iconic performers that would go on to inspire my career. And, Brian Stokes Mitchell and Audra McDonald and Renee Fleming and these towering figures that I came to look up to. I'd never been exposed to that kind of artistry at that level and that kind of Olympic singing before. And so to have it showcased in my living room, thanks to PBS, it meant everything. It was introducing me to this world that has become now my world, which is so crazy to say. But then I think once I got there, it's amazing. You're in this space that's larger than life, and somehow you feel like you're singing to each individual person in the room. It's such a beautiful thing, and I don't quite know how to explain it, but especially with some of those more intimate songs like God Help the Outcasts and I Wonder as I Wander, something comes over you that when you're in that space that you really just feel like it's just you and the music and Mack and the orchestra delivering these simple, beautiful messages. And I guess having the house lights down so you can't see quite how many people are in there helps. But it really, it felt, the scale felt amazing for sure, but it still felt like it was just another opportunity to share what I had to say with the people that were gathered there. So I think, when you see it on screen and the way that it's captured so cinematically with the booms, just these sweeping camera angles, it feels like this incredibly massive thing. But being on stage, it really just felt like an intimate performance.
Cool, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Rick Bentley with Next Star Media.
Ron, I'm going to follow up on an earlier question about talent. This is such a prestigious production to be part of. As far as the featured guest performers, could you talk a little bit about the process of picking who's going to be those people? Is it do you send out invitations? Do you get inundated with people wanting to be part of it? Can you just talk about the process?
So we do have a little bit of a process. We have a list, and we talk about how the music might interact with the story, because we have an actor as well as a singer. And so we start really with coming up with the idea of the production itself and how music and the story we're going to use may work together. And then we just reach out to representatives of our guest artists we want and keep our fingers crossed that they're available and interested. And I've been doing this now for 24 years. And it's just getting easier and easier for us to bring artists because of the work of PBS and its exposure to millions of viewers. Artists want to be a part of that. And of course, also to sing with this incredible choir of 360 singers and an orchestra of 150 so, our dancers, bell ringers. I mean, it's as they know, it's a spectacular event. And so our artists, even for this year, for example, we're doing it very quite late in the month, 3 days before Christmas, and yet we have our artists and actor coming. So it's been a great experience to invite these artists and then have them come and experience this for themselves. Our next question, thank you. Our next question is Karen Butler again with UPI.
How did you decide what to share about your families and your traditions in your introductions? Because they were just beautiful and heartfelt and personal. What was that process like?
Michael?
Well, I think we got to work with David, who directed this beautiful program to share what we felt comfortable sharing as far as our connection to certainly Christmas, but also to the message of the story that we were telling and the theme of the evening. I think he was very collaborative, and we got really to decide what we felt like sharing. I know that we had a conversation in New York when Ron and David and Mack came up to visit, where I just sort of shared with them like what my background is, what my connection to the Tabernacle Choir is, and to Christmas, of what it means to me. And I think a lot of that got incorporated into the how we went about selecting music for the show, and then later on when it came down to deciding what kind of stories we'd share to set up each piece. That was my experience. Lesley, do you want to talk about yours?
No, I'll just say that this is slightly off what you've just asked, but the particularly poignant thing that happened for me was that I told Ron and the team very early on that my brother, who English but lived in America for many, many years, he lived in South Carolina, had been wanting to see the Tabernacle Choir forever. I mean, he watched it on the TV every year, adored it, adored Mack, was in awe of him, and he could never get a ticket because it's quite hard to get a ticket. And they picked up on this immediately, and they flew my family out from South Carolina.
Oh,
so my
how wonderful.
I'll tell you what's kind of poignant about this is that I'm sorry to say this was last December that it happened, and he passed away in August. So he got to meet Mack, and he got to see the show, and he got to see his little sister in the middle on that stage. And that was a huge, anyway, it was a huge gift, but the fact that it was his last year on this planet makes it somewhat more special. Yeah.
Oh, how wonderful. And I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have again UK freelancer Catherine Hassel.
Lesley, being on stage in front of an audience of 21,000 people a night sounds thrilling and a bit more than a bit nerve-wracking, even after doing the West End. How nervous did you feel in front of all those people? And did it make you want to do more stage work in the US? Maybe even a musical on Broadway like Michael?
Well, do you know what? As you know, I've done musicals, not on Broadway, but I have, and it didn't feel like that. It's its own thing, this. It's not like anything else I've ever done. It's very specifically different. And the weird thing is, you knew my husband, who also passed away 2 years ago, but I believe he was right next to me. So I didn't feel nervous. It's the first time. And a big, big job like this, I didn't feel nervous. I was excited. I just couldn't wait to get on that stage. Weirdly, I felt supported by him.
Like Darbs was holding your hand while you were there.
You bet. Yeah, and it was great. I hope he tips up next time because it's very much easier to do it like that. It was really weird. And I'll tell you, I'm echoing what Michael said just now about it feeling like an intimate experience because you're up there and there are thousands of people in front of you. And I thought, well, I want to connect with these people, but how can I do that? And I've got a TV monitor to honor. But of course, then you realize that's what the teleprompter does. If you connect with the teleprompter, every person in that audience feels like you're speaking to them. It was really strange. I'd never made that connection before, but it did feel strangely intimate. It did.
We encourage our artists to really use the teleprompter as their best friend because we have jumbo screens in the hall. And so when they're looking at that teleprompter, really they're looking at the audience face to face live during the performance. And so that's where the connection is. And they do have a chance to glance out if they can see them when the lights are low, like Michael mentioned. But it's quite an experience. The teleprompters are very helpful for the hall as well.
And would you like to do a Broadway musical at some point?
Me?
Yeah.
Go on then. Anybody's listening? Yeah, why not?
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
We have Katie Yoder again with our Sunday visitor.
Hello, yes, this question is for Lesley and Michael. I'm wondering if viewers take away one message about Christmas after watching this, what do you hope that is?
I'd say what Victor Hugo said, which is aimer c'est agir, which means to love
Is to act.
is to act. To love is to act. So words are okay, but take actions, kindness in action, that's everything. So we need to remember to do that, lest we forget.
And I think I would echo that. I think just having compassion for those that don't look like you, maybe for those that have less than you, for those that are in situations that are struggling. I think, there's so many situations like that around the world right now. And I think the message of Christmas and this program specifically about, showing compassion to those folks and being generous, as generous as you can, especially this time of year, but year round. I think that's what I hope people take.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lottie Johnson from Deseret News.
Yes, I'm just wondering, so it's been almost and you probably both have touched on this, but it's been almost a full year since you have recorded these concerts. So what sticks out to you the most? If you could just pick one thing, what do you remember most about this? What sticks out to you?
The kindness and the generosity of the people who put it together. Ron and Mack, everybody on the team, everybody backstage. It was a very, very tight group of people, all giving of their best. And we were welcomed in so kindly, sweetly.
Yeah, I have never been so well cared for in a performance before. I mean, down to every detail, it was just such a dream. So that all we had to focus on was doing what we do. And very often with these, at least from my perspective in the concert world, you show up and you never really know if like this is, okay, that particular sound system is just what it is, and they're not going to help you out with that. None of that was the case here. Any single thing we wanted tweaked. If you wanted a little bit more of the organ in the vocal monitor, you could get that as soon as you asked for it. It was ready to go. And so all of that, the planning, the detail, the care, the generosity, the hospitality, that's I think what sticks out in my head. And that all goes without saying that the show itself turned out so beautifully. But I will never forget that and always be grateful for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next is Scott Fisherman from TV Insider.
Lesley, I know filming wrapped on the next movie in the Downton Abbey trilogy. What can you tell us, tease, what was the feeling on set, and how hard is it now to kind of continue on without Maggie here, who was such a pivotal part of that show and movies and everything about it?
Yeah. Well, it was a strange feeling on set because you realize this was the last time we'll ever do it. And we've been doing it for 14 years. So that's a long time. And that's a very bonded family. To lose Maggie was terrible. But on the other hand, I think she wasn't well and it was not a nice way to exist. And I think I'm a believer that, because I was drummed into me by my doctor dad, which is just being around ill is not really a way to live. And I hope it was the right time for her to move on. But, she wasn't in the last film, obviously, because she died in the last one. And she was missed because she was a great person to have around. She was highly entertaining and greatly loved by all of us. So, yes, it's tinged with sadness for sure. Yeah.
What can you say about the movie itself and what fans are going to see with this one?
Absolutely nothing. I'm so sorry. It's true though. We're not allowed. But
okay.
But please come and see it because it was made with much love and commitment as always. And I hope people like it.
Real quick, it's the show has been, we're coming on the holiday season. The Christmas episodes, everyone loved those. Do you have any favorite memory of filming those or anything from those?
Well, often I'd get a trip to the house, the Highclere, the place that is Downton Abbey. It was probably an hour away from London. And because I was constantly in the kitchen, quite rightly, because she would be, I didn't get trips over there very often. But when it was Christmas, there always seemed to be like a party or something around a Christmas tree or a family get together that I actually got to go and join them. So I've got memories of big Christmas trees in that big abbey and just, it looks very nice at Christmas, that building. It suits it very well. So I've got some very good memories of being there, filming those. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Barb Oates from Channel Guide.
Hi. I was wondering what moment in the show is maybe the most emotional or meaningful to you personally? And could you share why?
Let's start with Michael on that question, then we'll turn to Lesley.
I think the most meaningful moment for me was God Help the Outcasts, which was a song that I knew. I knew, the movie The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I'd listened to the soundtrack of that several times. But it was Esmeralda's song in the show, and I'm not sure if it was David or Mack's idea, or maybe both, but they suggested it as a good fit in the program. And I'm so glad that they did, because I think it really nails the message of Christmas for me, of this program. It's this really beautiful, humble prayer, just asking that people look compassionately on everyone. And, it's a simple thing, but such a tough thing to get right. And I think musically, the way the song builds with the choir coming in and then it ends in a very quiet, reverent kind of way is really beautiful. So that was probably the highlight for me in terms of what I was involved in. And then I just have to say that the choir just tearing through the Beethoven 9 Ode to Joy finale was, just like sonically, the experience of that was also extraordinary. Yeah.
Thank you. And Lesley?
I'd have to say that at the beginning of the concert, I mentioned my brother, because I tell the story that he'd always wanted to be in the audience, and here he was, and there he was on 2 of the performances, actually, out of 3, he was watching. And because he subsequently passed away in August, that's got to be a very poignant moment for me, but he got to see it, and that makes me very happy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's welcome Mike Hughes with TV America.
Yes, for Lesley, I was kind of struck when Michael said that his family wasn't particularly artsy. And here you are with a father who's a doctor, a mother who was a doctor. How did you become an actress in all this? And was your family fairly artsy, or what did they think of it when you became an actress?
Just to me?
Yeah.
Sorry, you broke up a bit. I didn't quite hear, but and the answer to that is, my mother would have been an actress. She got a place at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and then war broke out, so she didn't go. So a lot of her kind of ambition and passion for that was directed towards me. So she was always a great support in my career. My dad was never going to be an actor, but he was a musician, and he was self-taught, and I used to sing with him by his piano as a little kid. And so he would take me to the theatre. Him and I would go to the theatre. My mum preferred the cinema, but he was a big theatre fan. So I went to see tons of stuff with him and fell in love with it at a very early age. So I had an amazingly supportive couple of parents in their different ways, encouraging me to get on and do it, actually.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Our next call is from Lottie Johnson with Deseret News Again. Welcome, Lottie.
Hi, thank you. This question is for Michael. I'm wondering, so you recently completed a run on Broadway as Aladdin. I was just wondering if you could take a moment to reflect on that. And are you officially done with that role? Do you have another Broadway project in the works? Like, kind of what's next?
Yeah, it was a really extraordinary 3 years of my life. I finished the show in June, and it has opened so many doors for me. It's sort of a career-defining opportunity, and I'm so grateful that my body held up, my voice held up through all of that. It's a grueling schedule, 8 shows a week, leading a Broadway show, and it was also my Broadway debut, so I had nothing to compare it to necessarily, but I learned so much, and yeah, it's been really amazing, and I'm a better performer for it, for sure. In terms of what's next, I'm hoping to work on I am working on a solo album, my first ever solo album. It's something I've always dreamed about doing, and building a concert touring schedule, which is something I've been really excited about for a long time. But when you're in a long running Broadway show, you don't really get much free time to do much outside of it. So that's on the horizon, and I actually just booked another show here in New York, starting in the spring. I can't talk about it quite yet, but I'm excited to dig into a new score and a new script come spring. So stay tuned.
What kind of music will be featured on the solo album?
It's going to be a nice hodgepodge. That's always been what excites me as a vocalist is jumping in and out of genres. I studied classically. I was on the track to become an opera singer before theater sort of derailed me a little bit, detoured me. So it'll be a nice mix of some golden age Broadway standards, peppered in with some jazz arrangements of American songbook stuff, and then some more contemporary Broadway stuff. So a nice little hodgepodge, hopefully something for everybody.
I think my 6-month-old was very excited about that. She just had a little squeal.
All right, that's one person so far.
Thank you so much. Our next caller again is Alan Foster with Entertaining Options.
Hey, you had just said, for Michael, that this is it was a grueling process, and there wasn't much time and you had to stay in shape. Is there anything that you do vocally, like to stay in shape? Do you have a special diet, exercise regimen, or anything like that to perform? And if Lesley wants to answer too, she could answer as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I have an excellent vocal teacher, a vocal coach, a great team of folks that I check in with regularly to make sure that that my instrument is in shape. Diet-wise, it's every singer is a little bit different about what they need to avoid or eat in terms of keeping their voices in check. For me, it's really just I try to avoid eating like close before bedtime, issues of like reflux and stuff like that. I don't like to eat too close to performing, but I don't like to perform on an empty stomach either. So that's one thing about me. But otherwise, the main thing is really just limiting how much you use your voice during the day, which I think a lot of lay people might not, you probably don't take much stock about how long you're talking, or if you have to shout over the subway or things like that. Those sorts of things tend to wear your voice out in the same way that singing for a couple hours might. So just being cognizant of how you use your voice. It's tough when you carry your instrument with you everywhere you go, so you're affected by allergies and the weather and all kinds of things, and very often we're not performing at 100%, but that's just part of life, and you learn how best to take care of yourself. So that's my personal experience.
Yeah, you just reminded me, Michael, I was in the original production of Mamma Mia in the West End, and I hadn't done a long contract like that for I did it for 2 years, and I hadn't done that for years. And I remember somebody reminding me, when you wake up, speak, just to make sure you've got a voice. Because if you haven't, you need to tell somebody rather quickly. That's my
Call the
memory.
understudy, right? Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't know. Every show is different for me, but I mean, sometimes it's what you do between the jobs. At the moment, I'm in the grip of a terrifying personal trainer. So that's what I'm using my time for at the moment, just to get a bit fitter than I have been recently. So yeah, that's my current project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amber Topping, the Silver Petticoat Review.
Hi. This is a question for Lesley, and I think you just sort of answered it, but this is about, besides the Downton Abbey movie, what can we look forward to from you next?
In terms of jobs,
Yes.
have I got anything right? Well, it's the usual story. There is something next year, and it's being written at the moment, and I'm very excited about it. And it's a wonderful TV writer. But at this point, I can't say anything about it. I don't even know where it will be shown, but I know it's being written as we speak, and it's a part that's written for me. So I'm delighted about that.
Well, I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah. I hope so. I hope it will be rather than later next year. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Our last two questions, we'll hear from Catherine Hassel and then Mike Hughes.
Lesley, Mrs. Patmore changed your life in so many ways. What have been the most surreal things that have happened to you, thanks to Mrs. P? And how do you feel about saying goodbye to her and your Downton family after so long?
I think the most surreal moment for me was being recognized in a field in China by a farmer. Because I was visiting the charity that I support, called Animals Asia. And they're dealing with the horrible bear bile farming industry. And I was standing in a field, and this ancient old farmer was staring at me, looking very confused. And then he said through the interpreter, "Is that the lady from the Downton Abbey movie?" It just seemed a bit strange. In terms of how did I feel? Well, I think we tried very hard not to dwell on the fact that it was the end, but how I feel about my Downton family, I haven't lost them. They are, you can't stay friends with everybody you ever work with, but sometimes people are just keepers. And I mean, I regularly have dinner with Mr. Carson, Mrs. Hughes, my little Daisy, and Thomas regularly. It's a thing we do a lot. And I'm on the phone most days to Sophie, who played Daisy. I'm absolutely devoted to her, and she still calls me, "Tell her, Mummy."
But it's lovely that you've got like you say in the broadcast, the importance of family. It's not just your birth family; it's also your found family, and those people become your found family with you in good times and bad.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. That's true. You're very lucky if you find that, but I have definitely found that. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Catherine.
Our last question, Mike Hughes.
Yes, Lesley, you've mentioned that you're not a good cook in real life and that you're a vegan. I was wondering, do people now that you play to cook so often, do they try to nudge you into the kitchen sometimes? And are you planning on doing anything for the holidays, cooking anything or making anything?
No. I wouldn't do that to people. No, I mean, I did take some cooking classes when I lived in Los Angeles. I sort of went a bit towards the vegan way, but my husband was not interested in that whatsoever, and he was the cook. So I had to go and learn like pretty damn quick. The funny thing is that is because when I first started, I always think it's funny that people think you can cook because you're playing a cook. But I can't now, and I really couldn't when I started. But yes, the answer to that has changed over the years. I've got more interested in it, but I don't have much skill, I don't think. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Michael and Lesley, I'd like to maybe invite you to just give a final brief thought, and then we'll wrap it up tonight.
Well, I'd just like to say, I think you'll be thrilled by this production because it's just, I think the love and the commitment and the skill that's gone into it from everybody, and it's hundreds of people, for goodness sake. I think that comes through the screen at you, and the message of it is such a good, decent message. But I think as a piece of entertainment, it's superb. I really do.
Michael?
Yeah, I'm just so grateful that it's finally out there for the world to see. We got to share it with almost 60,000 people last year, but now to know that family that couldn't be there can now watch it, and so many people around the world get to see it. It feels really surreal to be a part of something that I've watched and admired from afar for so many years, and now that it's recorded so beautifully for the future is really, really special. So I think it's a beautiful testament to all the hard work that people put into it. I think it's a beautiful message. The whole thing from start to finish is just so epic, and I think people will really enjoy it.
Thank you. Well, we'll let you two go and get back to your busy lives and wish you the happiest of holidays. We send our love and greetings and gratitude for you joining us last year, and look forward to PBS and KBYU television and our Boston affiliates. We just couldn't do it without them either. And we'll see you all at the movies.
Bye.